afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, today we have another lecture on gender study. We would like to know about the basic understanding and what are the issues related to women. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in studio Dr. G.N. Trivedi. He teaches in Delhi University. He is a professor of political science. He written a large number of articles and regularly contribute to national and international journal, and also have keen eye on the women issues. So I hope his knowledge and experience will help us to understand this issue in a new perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. G.N. Trivedi for the EduSet lecture. Welcome.
Thank you, Amarendra ji. Well, I'm going to speak on feminism or gender, what you may call it, gender or feminism. And my lecture is mainly based on the understanding of feminism and main issues related with the theory of feminism or the understanding of gender. But before I come directly on the issue of gender, I would like to contextualize the emergence of feminism. If you contextualize the emergence of feminism, then you find that mainstream political theorists have often ignored the issue of gender difference. They have not taken gender into account. It is irony. The half of the population of human society belongs to women. But the history of political philosophy, the history of political theory, it is conspicuously absent from the issues of gender. If you see the ancient Greek philosopher, Aristotle, what does Aristotle say? He doesn't hold good view of women. And not only that, he says that women should not be allowed to participate in the political affairs, in the political life of community in city-states. He equates women with slaves because they are dependent on men. So he doesn't allow women to participate in the political process. If you come to later period, then we find French philosopher Rousseau. Rousseau is a great philosopher, but when his ideas on women come, then you find that he is also not very serious on women issues. In fact, what he says that women should be educated differently from men and should be excluded from the citizenship. He also talks of exclusion of women from citizenship rights. So, a French philosopher greatly inspired French Revolution, but on women issues, he is also hostile. He does not accord them equality. He does not accord them democratic rights. Again, we come to the later period. Then there is a German philosopher, Nietzsche. His views on women is quite startling. What he says that equal rights for women are evidence of a society in decline. Now, this is also, it's not also, but it is an extremely hostile view towards women. He does not imagine, he does not think of giving equal rights to women. Giving equal rights to women means decline of society. So, what I want to say, that the history of political theory is also a history of male theories. The work of William Godwin and Jean-Paul Sartre, they are important and they find place in the study material of political theory. On the other hand, the work of their partners, the partner of William Godwin Mary Wollstonecraft, she has done pioneering work on the women issues, but her work does not find place in the study of political theory. Similarly, the partner of Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, she has written a very famous book, Second Sex, and it is one of the classics on feminism, on articulation of feminist rights, on articulation of feminist worldview. But again, her work does not find as much importance and significance as the work of Jean-Paul Sartre. Forget about them. If you take into account the contemporary philosopher John Rawls, he has written a book in 1971. And what is in that book? A Theory of Justice. He has also neglected the issue of women. He does talk about original position. In original position, the head of households, they would decide the principles of justice. But he does not consider the site of family for enunciating the idea of justice. To him, the site of family forms the part of personal sphere, so it is not as important for justice as feminists they think of. So what I want to say that the thrust is the philosophical theoretical universe was totally hostile to the idea of feminism. It did not dwell on the issue of feminism. Of course, John Stuart Mill, he did talk about feminism. He did talk about enfranchising women. But others, they have neglected the issue of feminism, the issue of gender. Therefore, in this context, there is emergence of feminism. The point which I want to emphasize, that any theory, philosophy develops not in a vacuum. It develops in a particular context. It develops in reaction to something. You know, the way the half of the population, the way the issue of gender was neglected by philosophers, by theorists, that made the ground fertile for the emergence of feminism. Now, the second point which I want to emphasize in the context of feminism is meaning of feminism, or in other words, explanation of feminism, basic understanding of feminism. What does it mean? What one understand by the term feminism? You know, in this context, I would like to emphasize three distinct aspects on which I find convergence among feminist groups of all ideological persuasions. So these three aspects, these three dimensions related with feminism will define feminism, will explain feminism in a way that one should understand it. One should understand this very important theoretical philosophical trend. The first aspect is entrenchment of gender. You know, the gender is so much entrenched. What has happened? The human society is taking other social categories for understanding social, economic, and political behavior of society. Like we pick up caste, we pick up class, we pick up religion and other social categories to understand human behavior. But we do not give importance, as much importance to gender as it should have been given. The fact is that if you see the structure of society, if you try to understand society, then you realize that gender is one of the most important social cleavages. And without developing a proper understanding of gender, it is very difficult to understand society in its entirety. So this entrenchment of gender must be recognized. After all, half of the world population belongs to women. And what is their world view? How they perceive themselves in relation to other gender? These things are very important. So there is a need of sensitization, gender sensitization of the society. In other words, we must take into account the issue of gender in developing understanding about society, about the behavior, about political outcome, social economic outcome. Then it will give a complete picture without any partiality. If you do not take the issue of gender, then our understanding of social reality would be reductionist. We cannot know society in its entirety. So in order to know society in its entirety, to develop a nuanced understanding of society, we need to take gender, because gender is deeply embedded in society. It is entrenched in society. So this is one of the important categories of understanding social reality. So on this entrenchment of gender, there is almost total unanimity among different feminist groups. The other important dimension is the existence of patriarchy. Nobody can deny the existence of patriarchy. It is all because of patriarchy, deeply embedded patriarchy, that women groups, they find all sorts of discrimination. So the existence of patriarchy states that gender norms are not natural. They are created. Social structures based on gender disadvantage women. The kind of social structures we have developed, and the basis of that social structure is gender, and that gendered basis of social structure discriminates women, disadvantaged women. It creates a hierarchy with men at the top and women at the bottom. And patriarchy it also plays havoc with the psyche. It informally creates social norms, and that social norms, they are so hostile to the development of personality of a woman. Social norms, how to behave, what kind of relationship should exist between men and women, what is the division of labor between men and women. If you seriously try to understand the division between men and women created by patriarchal values, then we realize that these social norms, they are in fact denying equal gender rights to women. So this is very important to recognize the patriarchal basis of society and the root cause of women's problem, women's discrimination, gender inequality lies in the deep rootedness of patriarchy. So on this issue also there is total unanimity among gender groups that they have to confront patriarchy in order to overcome discrimination and denial of equal rights. So in such a situation, feminist groups, they emphasize the need for change because they all argue that patriarchy is unjust and needs reform. Feminism is thus reforming normative. If you see the background, I just explained. Feminism is essentially normative and reforming, or one may call it revolutionary movement. The need for change states that gender hierarchy is not natural, desirable, or inevitable, but should be changed. So this gender hierarchy or the inequality based on gender, they are not naturally ordained position. It has been created by society, and it is undesirable structure of society. Undesirable in the sense that it disadvantages women. It does not allow women to flourish, to develop the sense of equality. So there is a need to change such social world. There is a need to change patriarchy. There is a need to change in the values, prevailing values emanating from patriarchy. So these are the three aspects which I just spelled out. They are the aspects that explain the meaning of feminism, that explain the understanding of feminism. Now, in this context, I would also like to emphasize, I also like to dwell on feminist methods. How they confront, what mechanism they have developed to articulate, to reassert the identity of women. And in that context, I would like to refer Catherine Bartlett. She wrote a book, The Women Question, in 1990. And what she says that the existing laws do not take into account the women-specific problems. The women-specific problems. So, the women-specific problems. What does she mean by women-specific problems? The kind of system we have developed is almost short of the feminist worldview. So, we do not take into account the biological difference between men and women. What happens? Catherine says that 20s and 30s of any person's life time for growth, time for hard work, time for making a place. But in case of women, 20s and 30s, it is also time for giving birth to babies, nurturing them. So at their prime youth, it is almost inescapable from giving birth to babies and nurturing them. So there that creates unequal that creates inequality for the growth of women. If you do not take into account this specific biological problems of women, it is very difficult to think of employment. There cannot be gender neutral employment. Employment, whether employment generated by the state or employment generated by society, it must take women specific issues. If you do not take women specific issue into account, then it will create problem for their employment, not only employment, but it will create problem for their growth. Their growth as an enlightened human being, their growth as a employment seekers. So there is a need. The existing laws or the existing system, it has not taken into account the basic women problems. You have to take into account in devising, forming, in formulating state policies. So this feminist method specifically focuses on women issues to develop a more gender sensitive and gender related ideas of employment, ideas of development of women in different walks of life. The second method, like any social group which has been denied equality, which has been denied justice, to ensure equality, you need to raise the consciousness of that group. Unless you raise the consciousness of that group, it is very difficult to create equality. So this is important. Women groups, they have realized that they cannot create equality for women, gender equality, unless they raise consciousness of the women groups. And for raising consciousness, there is a need of constant interaction. If there is a constant interaction, if there is a sharing of experiences and sharing of denial, understanding each other's positions and locating the problems, the impediments in the way of their growth, it is very difficult to create a equal space for women. So they form organization, they develop a system of constant interaction, they share each other's problem, they confront the impediments. So through these processes, they try to raise the consciousness of women. In this context, I would also like to make a distinction between sex and gender. The patriarchal societies deliberately confuse the distinction between sex and gender. They confuse the gender with sexual difference. There is a need to make clear-cut distinction between sex and gender. Anatomical difference is obvious. There is absolutely no question or disagreement on anatomical difference. Women, they have a different reproductive organs. Men, they have different. So this is a biological difference. this biological difference is a fact of, it's a fact. It's a fact of life of women, it is a fact of life of men. But this fact should not be confused with gender distinction. You know, gender is a socially created difference. For instance, we societies says that girls should wear pink and boys should wear blue. For instance, we say that women are emotional, men are more robust. You know, the women, they like caring, they like household work. These are not biological difference. These are gender difference. These things are these ideas, these differences, how to clothe, what is your nature, what kind of work you prefer. This has been created by patriarchy. This has been created by patriarchal values. So if you want to liberate women, then you have to change gender difference, unequal gender difference, biological difference. There is no need, absolutely no need, to confuse gender difference with biological difference. Biological difference is a fact of life, but gender difference, patriarchal societies or those who are not favorable, hospitable to the idea of gender equality, they confuse both biological difference with gender difference. So there is a need to make clear-cut distinction between both of them, sex and gender difference, and there is a need to emphasize that gender differences, gender distinction created by patriarchal values, created by society, and they are not inevitable. They must be confronted. They must be, the women groups, they must struggle against such gender differences, such gender distinctions, so that they could achieve the goal of gender equality. So this is also very important. I just explained the women's method. In that context, I also explained the difference between sex and gender. Both should not be confused. You know, the responses, if you see the ideology, I just want to, very briefly, I want to dwell upon liberal view of feminism. You know, liberal view of feminism, it gives importance to equality, liberty, equal political rights, equal socio-economic rights. So naturally, they talk about equal gender rights. And for achieving equal gender rights, their main thrust is through institution. Gender equality can be created through the institutions of a state by enacting laws favorable to gender equality. So, enactment of law for gender equality, this is the main response of liberal feminism. And basically, this is their thrust, that women should not be denied equality at workplace, at home, and for that, to ensure equality, gender equality, realization of rights, there is a need of a strong laws that could promote these values. So this is a liberal response. Now I would like to dwell one very important aspect related to gender, related to feminism, and that very important aspect is the aspect of personal is political. Now, this is very important to know that many feminist groups, radical feminist groups particularly, they raised fundamental questions regarding sufferings of women in the domain of personal, in the domain of so-called personal. They just ignore something which has been denied to women in personal sphere, that this is my personal matter, that should not be discussed, debated in public. You know, if you see the genesis of this argument, then traditional liberal theory, what does it say? It clearly divides individual activities into personal, into private and public spheres, and something which is in public spheres, that something can be debated, discussed, confronted, criticized, articulated, re-articulated, but something which falls in the category of private domain, there individual should be allowed autonomy. That is his or her own domain. There they should have total autonomy. That should not be brought into public gaze. So this is the formulation. But women groups, they say that this formulation, this traditional liberal understanding, is so hostile to women groups that there is an urgent need to expose this construction of personal. And in this construction, it's a rallying cry of radical second wave feminism. This slogan aimed to capture the sense that women's operation occurs everywhere in areas that had not previously been subjected to scrutiny. You know, so they are raising that the site of family, the site of home, these sites have become hostile to the idea of gender equality. It has become hostile to the rights of equal rights of women. And in that context, I would like to quote Susan Moller-Vokin. She, in 1989, she argues that personal is political, and this one can understand through examining 4 separate claims. You know, in 4 ways, she tries to explain how this personal is a political construct. There is no substance in this personal. This claim is hollow. So we can understand the political nature of this personal by examining 4 positions, 4 separate positions. What are these 4 separate positions? The first, this personal is political. It highlights the fact that private sphere is a sphere of power. You know, hierarchy, injustice, abuses and violence can occur within the private sphere, and therefore it is a key area of feminist analysis. You know, the private sphere, the sphere of family, is not only a sphere of close relationship. You know, there is a subtle power between men and women in a household. There is in the household, there is hierarchy, injustices, abuses, and even domestic violence. In India, we have already in 2005 law against domestic violence. So simply saying that family is a very intimate site, it is based on human relationship, so it should not be open to public scrutiny. This is no longer sustainable. It is untenable according to feminism. What they say, that it is a site of power, and because it is a site of power, we find hierarchy, injustices, abuses and violence against women. So what they demand, that this private site, personal site, must be analyzed, scrutinized by feminism, by women groups, and a state should also take note of that. The second, so this is a sphere of power. The second is the second aspect related to this construction is that it is a political creation. It is politically constructed. The idea of personal is politically constructed. The state defines institutions such as family and marriage. You know how it is political construction. There is nothing personal about it. You know, marriage, divorce, inheritance, these are related with family. Marriage, the issue of marriage is related with family. The issue of inheritance, related with family. The issue of divorce, related with family. But all these issues, they are tightly controlled by the state. Marriage is controlled by the state. Inheritance, right to property, controlled by the state. Divorce is controlled by the state. Then how you can say that the site of family is personal? A state has made deep inroads in family matters, the family affairs, tightly controlled by the state. So one cannot pretend that this is my personal affairs and nobody is allowed to peep into it. This is simply untenable, and it is untenable particularly in the case of gender. You know, in the name of personal, the women group of women inside the house, they have suffered indignity, they have suffered exploitation, they have suffered worst kind of operations. The third dimensions related to this personal, that you know we develop a sense of justice as we grow up in a family. You know, family is a site where we inculcate values. If there is patriarchal values, there is a dominance of patriarchal values in the family, then the child growing in that family, he or she would internalize patriarchal values. Consciously, unconsciously, after growing up, they display those values, those patriarchal values. You know, if family structure, if it is not democratized, if it is controlled by patriarchal values, if it is controlled by values hostile to gender equality, then the family members grew in such a family, in such family, they would display gender bias later in their lives. So there is a need. You cannot wish it away. We cannot bring the institution of family in the domain of public simply on the ground that it is personal matter or it is a personal site. This cannot be accepted. Now the fourth point which the fourth dimensions related with personal, related with the construction of personal, is linked up with gender division of labor. This gender division of labor undermines gender equality. You know, it means that women are financially dependent on men and makes women unable to take up positions of power and influence. You know, the division of work, the way it has been decided, the way it has been made, it in fact keeps women inside the four walls of home. It does not allow women to go out. It does not allow women to imagine a career outside households. The women, they are denied employment. The women, they are hegemonized that they can do caring work far better than anybody else. So they should remain confined in the house. So this division of work or division of labor creates a situation where women are absolutely denied the position of power and influences. So these four dimensions which I just referred, they clearly prove that the construction of personnel is political. It's not logically, factually tenable. So women group, they have challenged this construction of personnel. Last but not the least, I come on the issue of sex and violence. You know, the issue of violence is also important. As I said, that we have domestic violence law passed in 2005, and this domestic violence is so important. Various studies done in different parts of the world, they clearly underline the fact that violence and rape against women have been perpetuated not by strangers but by the men to whom they are close. They are closely associated. Studies in Europe, studies outside Europe, it has confirmed that the rape and murder of women are in majority of cases done by the intimate partners, done by a close partner. So it is not done by somebody, a stranger. Strangers also rape and murder women, but in comparison to known persons, close partner, that number is very small. So the issue of violence is also important, and underlining this importance, here in India we have law against domestic violence. It was passed in 2005, and the target of this law is women. How to protect women from violence, domestic violence. There are so many domestic violence in our country, dowry death. This is one of the prevalent, and torturing, abusing, beating. So now this law against domestic violence, it has to some extent, it has protected women from domestic violence. Secondly, in the context of violence, radical feminists, what they say? They say that prevalence of violence against women is part and parcel of sex inequality. It is because women are unequal to men that they suffer violence, and the fact that women suffer violence helps to keep them unequal. Because this inequality, denial of education, denial of employment, division of work, all these unfavorable situations deliberately created, they prompt men to resort to violence against women. So radical women group, they want total separation of men and women. This is an extreme response to violence against women or rape against women. But there is a more moderate shade of opinion. And what is this moderate shade of opinion? Liberal opinion. It emphasizes the need of making stringent laws against violence, against rape, and they have emphasized the need of effective policing, court procedures, and conviction of rapists. So violence, the issue of violence, the issue of rape is very important, and different society has taken different measures to counter these widely prevalent inhuman practices. In the last, to sum up this whole discussion, I would say that feminism is a growing challenge, is a kind of revolution against prevailing understanding, prevailing philosophy, prevailing theory of human society. It gives them challenge to rethink and reconstitute society in a way that it could ensure gender justice, gender equality, and any state policy or any steps taken either by a state or by philosophers, they must take into account the issue of gender, the way they have taken into account the issue of class, the issue of caste, the issue of religion. The same weightage, same emphasis should be given to any issue by taking into account the issue of gender. Thank you very much.
Okay, so having listened the lecture, what is the prime cause or main cause you see, you can say that this is the main cause if it could be overcome, the position of women or the problems of women could be overcome?
Now, in my lecture, I just explained that what
Critical
happens.
position and all that. So I just want to know what is the main cause.
Two things I have said. I have just finished. The one is that we confuse sex and gender difference. The patriarchal society is male-dominated society. It wants to perpetuate that sex difference is the cause of women's sufferings. You know, sex difference is a biological fact. There is a different anatomical difference. But gender difference is something else. We have to make distinction. Gender, that I just cited the example that girls should wear pink and boys should wear blue. It is to say that women are emotional, they are efficient in caring. These are socially created. This is not biological difference. These are socially created difference. And socially created difference, patriarchal male-dominated society, they confuse this gender difference with sexual difference, with the difference of sex. Unless you make that this is a difference of anatomy and this is the difference created by male-dominated society. So the difference created by male-dominated society, that must end. Unless that end, it is very difficult to think of gender equality. This is the first thing. The second, that the women, as I said, that they suffer in the hands of their own men. Outsiders and strangers, they also do injustice, but in comparison to their own men or somebody to whom they are attached, they perpetuate all kinds of violence, all kinds of injustices. And this is because the construction of personal is political. Women groups, they say that this personal is political. Personal is the construction of personal is political. There is no substance in this personal. People say that if the question of women comes, or if it question of family, the violence within the family comes, they say that this is my personal matter. Please don't discuss it publicly. So that has also created problem. Women groups, they say that marriage, divorce, property right, these things are controlled by the state. Marriage is a personal matter. It is controlled. You registered your marriage. If you divorce each other, then you go to the state, go to the court. If you have a family property division, then you go to the court. So all these personal matters controlled by a state, controlled by court. But when it comes to injustices against women, then you say this is my personal matter, it should not be discussed. Now women, they say that no, we have to expose this construction of personal. This is a purely political construction. and we have to confront this political construction of personal to achieve equality, to achieve gender justice.
So the need is to strike first of these things.
Yes,
Only
and that
then-
is keeping this into the government of India. In India, we have law against domestic violence. It was passed in 2005. So women can take the help of a state or take the help of court in case of violence, any kind of domestic violence.
So the other question is, how much education has helped in overcoming the problem, not in highlighting the problem?
Education has minimized gender injustices, no doubt about it. The women, they are educated, they are employed, so comparatively they are.
A separate study has been done on the educated, differentiating educated women and uneducated women.
The studies have been done, and it goes without saying that those women are uneducated, they suffer a lot. They have been denied gender justice or gender equality off and on. But women, those who are educated, it is difficult in their case. But they are also discriminated. That discrimination is not very much visible. In case of educated women, discrimination against them not very visible. The kind of discrimination that they have imbibed while growing up in a family, they have imbibed some patriarchal values, and because of that internalization of patriarchal values, when they were growing as a child, they have seen how their parents and how the family members, they were swayed by patriarchal values. So because of internalization of patriarchal values at the time of growing, they also suffer. Educated women suffer. Their degree of suffering is different, and the kind of suffering is also different. It is not as visible as in the case of uneducated, unemployed women. But we cannot say that educated women are absolutely free from suffering. I cannot support this argument. They suffer, but they suffer in a different way.
Okay. So, well, friends, with this word, we would like to conclude the lecture here, and I thank all of you for watching the lecture. And on your behalf, I thank Dr. G. N. Trivedi for giving such a wonderful lecture. Thank you very much.